I've imagined it 100 times, but every time it still sends a chill down my spine. The moment the world goes dark, no warning sirens, no explosions, no flashes in the sky, just silence. 1 second you're scrolling through your phone, the next nothing. Dead screens, cars stalled in the streets, the hum of the refrigerator gone. It's not just a blackout, it's everything. Gone. That's what an EMP does. A silent, invisible monster that kills the modern world in a blink. A single electromagnetic pulse. Whether from a nuclear detonation high above the atmosphere or a targeted cyber weapon, can fry the grid, destroy circuits, and plunge cities into medieval darkness. Imagine every computer, phone, power line, and generator fried to useless metal. You're left in a world that doesn't remember how to live without electricity. The scariest part, it wouldn't just be the loss of light or internet. It would be the loss of control. Banks frozen, transportation dead, hospitals powerless, water pumps useless. Within hours, chaos spreads, people panic. Grocery stores are ransacked in a day. Gas stations run dry in hours. The thin veil of civilization tears apart faster than anyone expects, and you'll realize, maybe for the first time in your life, just how fragile our comfort really is. I can already hear the excuses. The government will fix it. The military has backups. The grid can't all go down at once. But that's a lie we tell ourselves to stay calm. An EMP doesn't care about your plans or your politics. It doesn't knock politely. It erases everything. And when it does, no one's coming to save you. The power you take for granted, your heat, your food, your safety, turns against you. Think about the people trapped in high rises when elevators stop, the hospitals running on failing generators, the streets, pitch black, filled with desperation and fear. Within a week, the strong prey on the weak. Within 2, communities turn tribal. Within a month, the death toll skyrockets. Not because of war, but because of cold hunger and ignorance. That's why I stopped laughing at preppers. That's why I started collecting what most people overlook. Simple, reliable, non-electric tools. Things that work when nothing else does. When I talk about the 11 cheap items that can save you, I'm not talking about gadgets or luxury gear. I'm talking about survival. The kind that keeps your family alive when the lights never come back on. So when I say prepare for an EMP or cyber collapse, I don't mean live in fear. I mean respect reality. The world we built depends on wires and chips that can vanish in seconds. When that happens, the ones who survive won't be the rich or the powerful. They'll be the ones who kept it simple, the ones who planned, the ones who didn't need a screen to survive. One fire extinguishers, your first line of defense. When the grid dies, the danger doesn't stop with darkness. It multiplies. Imagine this. You're 2 weeks into the blackout. You're burning candles for light, maybe cooking on a makeshift stove, or trying to keep your family warm with an improvised heater. You're tired, scared, and distracted. And then it happens. One spark, one overturned lantern, one little accident that ignites a nightmare. The fire grows faster than your panic. The orange glow fills the room, smoke pours out, and your first instinct is to call 911, but your phone is dead, the lines are dead, and help isn't coming. No fire trucks, no sirens, no brave firefighters rushing through the night. It's just you, your family, and the flames that want to eat your home alive. That's why I call a fire extinguisher the first real line of defense in a post-EMP world. Not a gun, not a bunker, a fire extinguisher. Because one fire in a world without electricity or emergency services can destroy everything you fought to save. I've stocked up on 3 kinds, small portable extinguishers for every room, rechargeable water extinguishers that can be refilled and pressurized with something as simple as a bike pump, and a backpack sprayer for outdoor use. That sprayer might sound like overkill until a wind-blown ember lands in your yard and turns dry grass into a wall of fire. It's easy to underestimate how deadly fire becomes when there's no one left to stop it. In modern times, a house fire is tragic. After an EMP, it's a death sentence. It's not just the flames, it's the smoke, the loss of shelter, the exposure to the cold. Your home is your fortress, your supply base, your only safety. Watching it burn means watching your survival plan turn to ash. The irony is cruel. To survive without electricity, we'll go back to fire, candles, wood stoves, lanterns, open flames. But fire is both friend and enemy. It gives warmth and takes everything if you lose control for even a moment. That's why I treat extinguishers like gold. They're simple, mechanical, EMP-proof, and they buy you time, the most precious resource in a disaster. If you've never used one, learn now. Practice. Because when it happens, panic kills faster than flames. You won't have the luxury of reading instructions while smoke blinds you and your kids are screaming. You'll need to act on instinct. That small red cylinder on the wall may be the only thing standing between you and a pile of blackened ruins. In a world without power, everything becomes flammable. Your hope, your home, your sanity. Fire extinguishers aren't optional gear, they're survival lifelines. When everything else stops working, they still will. 2 sustainable indoor heat sources. Now picture the days after the EMP. No power, no heat, no gas. The silence of your home is broken only by the sound of teeth chattering. The temperature drops fast, and so does morale. You can pile on blankets, but eventually the cold seeps into your bones. If you've ever spent a night in a freezing room, you know that cold doesn't just hurt, it breaks you. That's when you realize just how fragile modern heating really is. The furnace is dead. The thermostat's a useless piece of plastic. Propane tanks run dry and the fuel trucks aren't coming back. You can't call the gas company. You can't even start your generator if its circuits were fried in the pulse. And then you look at your family. Pale faces, trembling hands, and you know you have to make a choice. Find heat or watch them fade away. That's why I prepare for sustainable heat sources that don't rely on refills, batteries, or miracles. A simple wood-burning stove can save your life. It's old-fashioned, heavy, and doesn't care about EMPs. All it needs is wood, and wood is everywhere, if you know where to look. Fallen branches, pallets, scrap timber, it all burns. For those who can't install a stove, I've seen people make DIY oil heaters that run on vegetable oil or waste oil. They're cheap, safe, and simple to build from things you probably already have. Metal cans, wicks, and patience. They don't just warm a room, they remind you that survival isn't about high-tech gadgets. It's about ingenuity. And here's something most people overlook. Heat isn't just comfort, it's life. When the cold sets in, your body starts shutting down. You move slower, think slower, and make mistakes that can kill you. Hypothermia doesn't care if you're tough. It takes you while you sleep. That's why sustainable heat sources are second only to water in a survival situation. I've lived through power outages before, the kind that last days, not months. Even then, the cold was unbearable. Now imagine that stretching for weeks. You can't risk running out of propane or waiting for rescue. You need something you can fuel yourself. Something that doesn't depend on anyone else. A wood stove keeps burning as long as you feed it. A makeshift oil heater can run on household supplies. Both can cook your food and heat your water. Both can outlast any generator, and both will keep your family alive when the temperature outside could kill in hours. So when I think about the EMP nightmare, I don't just see darkness, I see cold. The kind that kills quietly. The kind that creeps under doors and through walls. That's why I prepare now, while I still can. Because when the pulse hits, and the lights go out for good, you won't have time to build. You'll either have heat, or you won't. And in that frozen silence, you'll learn the hard truth. Comfort was never a guarantee. It was a luxury we mistook for permanence. 3. Non-electric heater fans. The silent machines that keep the cold away. When the grid died in my mind's rehearsal of the end of the world, the first thing I imagined was the dark. But the second was the cold. The kind that cuts straight through your bones and makes every breath feel like shards of glass. When the power goes out, you can light candles and burn wood. But the truth is, fire alone doesn't always save you. Heat rises, the top of the room stays warm while the rest freezes. The air turns thick, uneven, suffocating. That's when I discovered something so simple it almost feels supernatural. The non-electric heater fan. These small mechanical fans sit on top of a stove or heater, and they move on their own. No wires, no batteries, no noise, just heat transforming into motion. They take the energy of the fire and use it to circulate warmth, pushing it across the room so that every inch of space gets touched by heat. The first time I saw one in action, I couldn't look away. The blades spun silently in the rising air, like a whisper from another era. A tool built for when the world didn't depend on circuits and code. Imagine a world where the wind outside howls like a hungry animal, where the glass frosts over, and where your breath turns white even indoors. You huddle near the stove, but the rest of the house is an icebox. Without a fan, the warmth dies where it's born. But with one of these mechanical miracles, the air moves, you feel it wrap around you, soft, invisible fingers of life, pushing back the cold's advance. People think about stockpiling food, water, and weapons, but they forget about comfort. Comfort isn't luxury in survival, it's sanity. When your children cry because their fingers are numb, when your partner shivers under 5 blankets, comfort becomes the line between calm and panic. And that's what this tiny, unassuming fan provides. Peace in the middle of a freezing apocalypse. I can't stop thinking about how fragile warmth really is. One EMP, one cyber attack, and all the convenience of thermostats and heaters evaporates. When I see those fans spinning on their own, I see defiance. They don't need a plug or a switch. They remind me that there are still ways to fight back against a world that's gone dead. When the cold claws at your walls and the air turns deadly still, that small fan becomes your heartbeat. The rhythm of survival, for pressure cookers and canners. The fight against starvation. I've often thought about what happens 2 weeks after the collapse. The panic buying fades. The shelves are bare. You open the refrigerator and it's nothing but rot and regret. The food you thought would last, didn't. The freezer's a puddle, the milk's sour, and the smell of decay clings to the air. That's when you realize food storage wasn't about luxury. It was about life. That's where the pressure cooker and pressure canner become your secret weapons. Most people think they're old-fashioned kitchen tools. They're wrong. They're survival technology in disguise. In a world without power, you need every ounce of efficiency. You can't waste fuel or time. You can't afford to lose half your food to spoilage. A good pressure cooker lets you prepare a meal fast, using a fraction of the energy, while a pressure canner lets you preserve your harvest, locking in life for the long haul. I remember the first time I watched jars of meat and vegetables sealing under steam. The hiss and rattle sounded almost alive, like the last heartbeat of civilization kept inside glass. Those jars became gold, food that didn't rot, didn't depend on cold storage, didn't need anything but fire to prepare. When everything else dies, your pantry becomes your fortress. Now picture this. It's been months since the EMP. The neighbors who laughed at prepping are gone, or desperate. The air smells of wood smoke and hunger. But in your kitchen, your quiet candlelit kitchen, you open a jar. Inside, perfectly preserved stew, rich and ready. The smell fills the room, warm and real. You feel the difference between surviving and truly living. Most people don't realize how quickly society collapses when the trucks stop rolling. Food distribution is a machine made of timing and power. Once those break, famine follows. But with a pressure canner, you break the dependency. You become the supply chain. You don't just store food, you create it, preserve it, defend it. And here's what keeps me awake some nights. After an EMP, there will be no more supermarkets, no canned goods restocked, no bread baked in sterile factories. What you can cook and preserve will define whether you live another season. A pressure cooker is your clock, your lifeline. It teaches you patience and control in a world gone mad. Every sealed jar is another day bought from death's schedule. When the world goes quiet, the sound of a pressure cooker hissing over fire is the sound of victory. 5 kerosene or oil lanterns. Light in the darkness. I used to think darkness was just the absence of light. But it's more than that. When the power dies and night falls for real, no street lights, no hum of electricity, no glowing windows, darkness becomes alive. It creeps in from every corner, swallowing shapes and sounds. You can't see your own hands, and every noise feels like a threat. That's when you understand, light isn't just about seeing, it's about believing you're not alone. The first time I lit a kerosene lantern, I understood what survival feels like. The flame flickered, weak at first, then strong, casting a soft golden glow that pushed back the shadows. That one small light made the room feel alive again. It was ancient, primal, fire captured in glass. And in that moment, I knew that no EMP could take that away from me. You can have solar panels, battery backups, or fancy flashlights, but an electromagnetic pulse doesn't care about your technology. It wipes it out like chalk on a blackboard. The only things that keep shining are the ones that never needed wires. Kerosene lanterns, oil lamps, the oldest, simplest tools of light. The world outside may be black, the sky empty, the city silent, but inside, that little lantern becomes a sun. The warmth it gives off is small but real. I've sat beside one for hours, watching the flame dance, feeling its heat on my skin. It's hypnotic and grounding. It tells you that even in total collapse, some things endure. But the dark is not just inconvenient, it's dangerous. Without light, accidents multiply. Cuts, burns, injuries. Tiny mistakes that can turn fatal when there's no hospital to run to. The lantern's glow is more than comfort. It's safety. It's your eyes, when the world forgets to shine. I keep several around the house, each one ready, filled and tested. I know how long they burn, how much oil they drink. When the power grid dies, they'll be my guardians. The light they give will guide me through the rooms, through the nights that never seem to end, because when darkness rules the earth again, even a small flame becomes a rebellion. Sometimes I imagine stepping outside during that endless blackout, lantern in hand. The sky would be a blanket of stars, no artificial light, no noise, just silence and infinity. And in my grip a single flicker, defying it all. A symbol that no matter how bad it gets, humanity still burns, because that's what survival really is. Keeping the light alive when everything else has gone dark, and when the day comes that an EMP wipes out our world, the survivors won't be the ones with the biggest houses or newest tech. They'll be the ones holding the lanterns, walking through the ruins with fire in their hands and fear in their hearts, refusing to let the darkness win. 6 manual kitchen gadgets. When survival tastes like blood and sweat, when the lights went out and the hum of machines fell silent, I realized how much we had surrendered to convenience. No blenders, no mixers, no grinders. The silence of the kitchen was deafening. It wasn't peaceful. It was primitive. And in that stillness, I understood that food wasn't just about hunger anymore, it was about survival. The first time I tried to grind coffee beans by hand, it felt almost ridiculous. I had a small hand-cranked grinder, an antique I'd once bought as decoration, but when the EMP hit and the electric one died, that little relic became my morning ritual and my lifeline. The handle creaked, the beans cracked, and the smell rich, strong, almost defiant, filled the air. For a moment, it felt like a victory. Then came the rest of the kitchen. Flour mills, meat grinders, pasta rollers, whisks, things my grandparents probably used without thinking. Each of them became a new lesson in humility. You don't just make flour, you work for it. You don't just slice meat, you grind it by hand until your wrists ache. Every meal becomes a battle, and every bite feels earned. But there's something deeper in it too, a kind of resurrection. When everything electrical dies, these old tools don't. They sit there quietly waiting for you to remember them. The mortar and pestle, the knife sharpener, the hand-cranked beater that laughs at your dead food processor. You begin to understand that survival isn't about hoarding gadgets. It's about knowing how to live without them. Still, there's something terrifying about the thought. Picture this. It's been months since the EMP. You've eaten through your canned goods. You're grinding grains in the dim light of a lantern. Your hands blistered, the air thick with dust. Outside, it's quiet, too quiet. The world has gone back a century overnight, and the sound of that grinder turning is the only thing that reminds you you're still human. Most people won't make it that far. They won't have the tools, they won't have the patience. They'll starve waiting for power to return. But not me. I'll be there sharpening knives on a whetstone, kneading dough by hand, boiling water on fire. Because when the machines die, the survivors are the ones who remember how to build life from muscle and willpower. Every turn of the handle, every clang of metal on metal, feels like defiance, like spitting in the face of a dead civilization. When the grid fails, these tools won't. And that's what makes them sacred, because they remind us that even when technology betrays us, our hands still work. 7 manual tools and hardware. The arsenal of the forgotten. When an EMP hits, the world doesn't just stop, it falls apart. Homes break, fences collapse. Doors jam, and there's no one coming to fix it. The repairmen, the hardware stores, the supply chains all gone in a blink. That's when the manual tools become the true weapons of survival. The hammer, the saw, the screwdriver. The axe, the shovel. Each one feels heavier after the lights die because now they're not tools, they're lifelines. I remember holding my old handsaw, the blade dulled and rusting, and realizing that it might be worth more than gold now. When nothing works, the only thing that does is you. You'll need to fix everything yourself. The roof leaks, you patch it. The door breaks, you rebuild it. You need firewood, you swing until your shoulders scream, and when scavengers come in the night, you use the same tools to defend what's yours. Crowbars, sledgehammers, bolt cutters. They become the language of survival. I still remember the smell of oil and metal when I went through my shed after the blackout. The wrenches felt cold, heavy, honest. There's something almost comforting about their simplicity. No batteries, no charging ports, no fragility, just steel and sweat. I sharpened the blades, greased the hinges, lined them up like soldiers. Because once the world falls, your survival depends on what you can build and what you can break. But it's not just about defense, it's about creation. You'll need to grow your own food, build your own fences, repair your own shelter, gardening tools, post hole diggers. Hand drills, they're not extras anymore, they're essential. The people who laughed at preppers will soon realize that without a simple wrench or a handful of nails, they're helpless. Imagine the chaos, vehicles abandoned, buildings crumbling, the air thick with panic. While others cry over their useless gadgets, you'll be tightening bolts, fixing hinges, cutting wood. You'll be one of the few who can still shape the world around you. Because in a post-EMP world, creation is power, and don't underestimate the small things. The nails, the screws, the washers. When the stores are empty and the factories are dead, these small pieces of metal will become currency. You'll trade them for food, for shelter, for safety. Because when civilization collapses, construction begins again, from the ground up, one screw at a time. When I look at my toolbox now, I don't see tools, I see survival. I see control in a world spinning into chaos. I see the last defense against helplessness. These manual tools are relics of the old world, but in the new one, they'll make you a god among scavengers. 8. Bicycles and carts. The last wheels that keep turning. When the engines die, silence follows. The highways turn into graveyards, cars frozen mid-escape, trucks stalled like corpses of a vanished civilization. You can almost hear the ghosts of engines that will never start again. That's when you realize the truth. Without fuel, we're trapped in our own homes. But not all wheels stop turning. I remember dusting off my old bicycle the morning after the blackout. The air was eerily still, no hum of traffic, no airplanes, no distant engines, just birds, wind, and the soft creak of pedals as I started moving. It felt wrong and beautiful at the same time. For the first time in my life, I could hear the world breathing. The bicycle isn't just transportation, it's freedom when the roads die. With no gasoline, no functioning vehicles, and no working grid, the bike becomes your lifeline. You use it to fetch water from miles away, to find firewood, to scavenge supplies. Every turn of the pedals feels like resistance against a collapsing world. But the real power lies in what you can attach to it. Trailers, carts, wagons. With those, your bike becomes a beast of burden. You can haul food, fuel, or even the injured. It's not fast, but it's steady, and in a dead world, that's all that matters. Of course, it's not easy. The roads are broken, covered in debris, filled with desperate people. You'll learn to move quietly, to avoid being seen. You'll keep your tires patched, your chains oiled, your gear light, because once you're on that bike, you're exposed, vulnerable. But at least you're moving. You've seen what happens when people can't. They starve where they are, trapped by distance. The EMP turns cities into cages, suburbs into deserts. But with a bicycle, you have mobility, and mobility means survival. You can reach streams, barter posts, hidden garden. You can escape when danger comes. Sometimes I imagine the future after the fall. Hundreds of survivors on bicycles, moving silently through the ruins, headlights replaced by lanterns, wheels crunching over gravel. Civilization reduced to a whisper of gears and breath. The thought sends chills down my spine. But there's beauty in it too. The bicycle doesn't rely on anyone else. It runs on muscle, determination, and the will to live. It's the last remnant of human ingenuity that doesn't need power. When everything stops, it keeps going. When every other machine fails, it endures. That's why I keep mine close. Oiled, maintained, ready. Because when the sky burns and the engines die, I won't be stranded. I'll still be moving, still alive, still free. And in that silent, powerless world, the only sound worth hearing will be the quiet rhythm of petals turning in the dark. 9. Chlorine bleach. The chemical lifeline in a world of rote. The day after the EMP hit, the world didn't end in explosions or flames, it ended in silence and stench. The taps went dry. The toilets stopped flushing. The rivers turned brown, and puddles of filth began to breed disease faster than anyone could react. That's when I realized the real killer wouldn't be the lack of power. It would be the water. I still remember that first week. People were drinking from garden hoses, from streams slick with mud and decay. Desperation makes fools of us all. The hospitals were already dead. No machines, no power, no sterilization. A scratch could mean infection, and a sip of the wrong water could mean death. That's when I reached for something most people overlook: unscented chlorine bleach. It's ugly stuff, sharp smell, burns the skin. But in a world without filtration plants or running water, it's nothing short of divine. Just a few drops in a gallon of water, and you can kill almost anything. Bacteria, viruses, parasites. When the water turns against you, bleach turns it back. The first time I used it post-collapse, I hesitated. The water was cloudy with a faint green hue. It looked like something pulled from a gutter. I added the bleach, stirred, and waited. After 30 minutes, it smelled faintly of chemicals but looked clear, pure enough to drink. I took a sip, half expecting it to burn my throat. It didn't. It was clean, safe, life-giving. But bleach isn't just for water. It's for survival hygiene. Blood on the floor after hunting. Clean it. Someone's wound festering. Dilute it and disinfect. When disease begins to spread, a rag soaked in bleach becomes your sword and shield. The apocalypse won't kill you fast. It'll do it slowly through infection, fever, and rot. Bleach keeps that death at bay. I've heard stories of survivors who died not because they ran out of food, but because their camp got sick. One person drinks dirty water, coughs, vomits, and within days, everyone's dying. That's how civilizations fall. That's how tribes vanish, not from war, from contaminated water. So now I stock it like gold. Unscented chlorine bleach, cheap, available, life-saving. I know how much to use, how long to wait, and how to stretch every drop. Because when the grit is gone and the world smells like rot, a gallon of bleach becomes worth more than any gun or dollar bill. It's terrifying, really. Civilization once relied on billion-dollar systems to keep our water clean. But when all that vanishes, it takes just one forgotten bottle to do the same job, to save lives when everything else failed. 10. Non-electric wood-fired still. The fire that recreates civilization. Most people hear the word still and think of moonshiners in the woods, brewing whiskey under a blood-red sky. But in the ruins of an EMP-struck world, a wood-fired still isn't just a relic of backwoods rebellion, it's the beating heart of independence. When the pharmacies go dark, the fuel pumps freeze, and medicine becomes myth, the still becomes the last tool of civilization that actually works. It doesn't care about electricity. It doesn't need permission. Just heat, metal, and time. I built mine from scrap, a barrel, copper tubing, some patience. The first time I ran it, I wasn't making liquor. I was making sanity. I needed clean alcohol to sterilize wounds, to preserve herbs, to trade. Watching that first clear drip slide down the pipe felt like watching the world's oldest magic. The hiss of steam, the smell of fire, the trickle of something pure. It's mesmerizing, but the still can do more than make alcohol. It can make fuel, it can extract essential oils for medicine, and even produce small quantities of clean water through distillation. It's a laboratory of survival powered by fire, and in the silence after the EMP, fire is the only power left that answers to you. I knew an old man once, a mechanic from the hills, during wartime shortages decades ago. He survived by distilling fuel from pine sap, traded it for food and supplies. When I asked him what kept him alive, he didn't say guns or gold. He said a barrel, a pipe, and patience. That lesson stuck with me. Now, I see it clearly. In the ruins, Everyone will want something: medicine, disinfectant, liquor, anything that burns. A still gives you all that and more. It gives you trade power. When others are starving, you'll have what they need. You'll become valuable, protected, maybe even feared. But there's a darker side too. The smell of burning wood and alcohol draws attention. In the dead of night, while I run the still, I can feel the eyes watching. The desperate, the hungry, the dying. They know that where there's a still, there's life. And in this new world, life is something people are willing to steal. I keep it hidden now, deep in the woods, under a tarp of smoke and shadow. I run it only when the wind carries the scent away. Each time I do, I'm reminded of how fragile power really is, and how easily it can be reborn with nothing but fire and metal. When the world ends, the ones with stills won't just survive. They'll rebuild civilization, one drop at a time. 11 Survival Library. Knowledge is the last weapon. When the EMP fried everything, people lost more than their devices. They lost their memory. The internet was gone. Laptops, phones, tablets, all dead. Decades of information vanished in seconds. And the scariest part, people didn't even realize how much they'd forgotten. I did. I sat there with my useless laptop in front of me and laughed. Not out of humor, but out of sheer disbelief. All the tutorials, recipes, medical guides, DIY fixes, all gone. I couldn't even remember the correct dose of salt for water purification without looking it up. It was like my mind had been hollowed out by the internet. That's when I understood something that chilled me to the bone. Digital knowledge is fragile. It dies with the grid. But paper doesn't. Now I guard my survival library like it's gold. Books on foraging, medicine, farming, hunting, carpentry, animal care, first aid, and primitive skills. Every one of them smells like dust and salvation.